I never thought my graduation day would end with my sister trying to destroy me in front of 500 people. But there I was, frozen in the middle of the auditorium aisle, listening to Veronica's voice cut through the ceremonial music like a knife. She cheated her way through college. Every head in that massive room turned toward me. The student in front of me stopped walking. The family sitting to my left gasped. Somewhere behind me, I heard my father make a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. Veronica was standing on her chair now, one arm pointed straight at me, her face twisted with something that looked like pain but came out as rage. Her expensive dress caught the light from the chandeliers overhead. She'd always known how to command a room. "She paid someone to write her thesis," Veronica shouted, and now people were pulling out their phones. I could see the little red recording lights starting to blink all around the auditorium. This wasn't just going to ruin my graduation. This was going to be on the internet forever. My hands were shaking. 4 years of work. 4 years of surviving on 3 hours of sleep, working 3 jobs, coding until my eyes burned. 4 years of proving I belonged here. And my own sister was trying to take it all away in 30 seconds. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God, is that her sister?" Dean Holloway stood at the podium on stage, her expression unreadable. She'd paused mid-sentence when Veronica started screaming. Now she was just watching, waiting to see what I would do. I looked at Veronica, really looked at her. Her makeup was running. Her hands were shaking as badly as mine. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. She actually believed what she was saying. She'd convinced herself it was true because the alternative was too painful. That I'd succeeded where she'd failed. That I'd earned something she'd lost. My father was standing now, trying to reach Veronica, trying to quiet her down. Aunt Helen had grabbed his arm, holding him back. The security guards near the exits were talking into their radios, unsure if they should intervene. "Everyone knows she's not smart enough for this." Veronica's voice cracked on the last word. "She stole everything. The research, the grades, all of it." The student in front of me had completely stopped walking now. The whole line had ground to a halt. Some of my classmates were staring at me with suspicion. Others looked sympathetic. Most just looked uncomfortable, like they'd stumbled into a family fight at Thanksgiving and didn't know where to look. I had 2 choices. I could run out of that auditorium crying, let Veronica win, let everyone believe there might be truth to her accusations. Or I could do what I'd done every single time life tried to knock me down. I could keep walking. So I did. 1 foot in front of the other. Past the frozen students, past the whispering families, past my father's devastated face, and Veronica's triumphant one. I kept my chin up and my eyes forward. Even though my heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "She's walking away because she knows I'm right," Veronica screamed behind me. "She can't even defend herself." But I wasn't walking away. I was walking toward the stage, toward Dean Holloway, toward the diploma I'd earned through blood, sweat, and more tears than I'd ever admit. The other students in line started moving again, following my lead. The ceremony was supposed to continue. That's how these things worked. You didn't stop everything just because one person decided to cause a scene. I climbed the steps to the stage. My legs felt like water. The bright lights were hot on my face. Dean Holloway was watching me with those sharp eyes of hers, the ones that had terrified me during my thesis defense. But there was something else in her expression now, something like respect. She handed me my diploma folder, but I didn't take it yet. Instead, I leaned in close to her, close enough that the microphone wouldn't pick up my words. "I kept copies of everything," I whispered. My voice was steadier than I expected. "Every draft, every timestamp, every email. If she wants to do this publicly, I can prove my innocence publicly." Dean Holloway's eyebrows raised slightly. For 3 long seconds, she just looked at me. Then her lips curved into a small smile. Not a friendly smile. A dangerous one. The smile of someone who'd just realized they were holding all the winning cards. She gave me an almost invisible nod. Then she turned to her microphone and her voice filled the auditorium, calm and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The whispers died down. Even Veronica went quiet, probably thinking she'd won. that the dean was about to drag me off the stage. I stood there holding my diploma folder, my heart hammering, watching Dean Holloway's face. Behind me, I could hear Veronica breathing hard, could feel the weight of 500 pairs of eyes on my back. Dean Holloway looked out at the crowd with the expression of a woman who dealt with far worse than one jealous sister causing a scene. Her next words were going to change everything. "Before we continue with this ceremony," she said slowly, deliberately, "I believe we need to address some serious allegations that have just been made, and I believe in addressing them properly." She gestured to someone off stage. The side door opened. Professor Barnes walked out carrying a laptop and a thick folder. My legs almost gave out with relief. He'd come. They'd believed me. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't face it alone. Veronica made a small sound from the audience, something between a gasp and a whimper. She was starting to realize she might have made a terrible mistake. Professor Barnes set his laptop on the podium next to Dean Holloway with a soft click that somehow echoed through the silent auditorium. He was wearing his good suit, the one he saved for academic conferences, and his face was completely serious. This wasn't just my thesis advisor coming to my defense. This was a respected researcher with 20 years of publications, putting his reputation on the line. The large screen behind us flickered to life. "Miss Veronica Winters," Dean Holloway said, and her voice had gone cold. "You've just accused your sister of academic fraud in front of witnesses, on camera, during an official university ceremony. That's a very serious claim." Veronica was still standing on her chair, but now she looked less sure of herself. Her father had finally reached her and was trying to pull her down, but she shook him off. "I have proof," Veronica shouted, but her voice wavered. "I have emails. I have evidence that she couldn't have done that work alone." "Then, by all means," Dean Holloway gestured to the screen. "Let's look at evidence. Real evidence." I glanced at Professor Barnes. He gave me the smallest nod, the same one he'd given me before my thesis defense. "You've got this." I wanted to hug him. "Academic integrity is the foundation of this institution," Dean Holloway continued. "So let's be very clear about what Miss Cassie Winters actually accomplished during her 4 years here." The screen changed. My student ID photo appeared, along with my transcript. Perfect grades stared out at everyone. But that wasn't what made people murmur. It was the notation at the bottom. Full scholarship recipient. Work-study program. 3 campus jobs held simultaneously. Dean Holloway read it aloud like she was presenting evidence in court. Miss Winters didn't just excel academically. She did it while working 60 hours a week to pay for her housing and food. I hadn't told anyone about that. I'd been embarrassed about how hard I had to work when other students had their parents' credit cards. But now Professor Barnes was pulling up something else. Time-stamped logs from the computer science lab. "These are security badge swipes," he explained, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. "They show every time Cassie entered and exited the coding lab. Some of these sessions lasted 12, 14 hours. Many started at 2 in the morning. The screen filled with dates and times. Hundreds of them. A map of my exhaustion laid out in data points." My father made a choked sound from the audience. I'd told him I was studying. I'd never told him I was basically living in that lab, sleeping on the couch between coding sessions because I didn't have time to walk back to my apartment. "Now let's talk about her thesis," Professor Barnes continued. He pulled up a document, and I recognized it immediately. "My research paper. This is titled Advanced Encryption Protocols for Distributed Network Security. It's been accepted for publication in the Journal of Cybersecurity Research. That's peer-reviewed, for those unfamiliar with academic publishing, meaning experts in the field examined this work and confirmed its originality and value." Someone in the audience started clapping, then stopped awkwardly when they realized no one else was joining in. But Veronica wasn't done. "That doesn't prove she wrote it herself. She could have paid someone. I saw the emails with you, Professor Barnes. All that back and forth. All that help you gave her. How do we know you didn't do the work?" A few people nodded. It was a fair question, if you didn't understand how academic research worked. Professor Barnes smiled thinly. "I'm glad you brought that up. Let's show everyone exactly what our correspondence looked like." The screen changed again. Email chains appeared, but not the ones Veronica was expecting. These were from 18 months ago, when I'd first proposed my research topic. "This is Cassie's initial proposal," Professor Barnes said. "Note the date. Note also my response." His email read, "Interesting idea, but the encryption model you're proposing has some fundamental flaws. See my notes in red. Think about the key exchange problem more carefully." The next email was my response, 3 days later. I'd completely reworked my approach, addressing every issue he'd raised and proposing a new solution. "This is called advising," Professor Barnes told the audience. "I point out problems. The student solves them. That's not cheating. That's education." He scrolled through months of emails. Every single one showed the same pattern. He'd ask questions. I'd answer them. He'd challenge my assumptions. I'd prove my reasoning. Back and forth, the entire evolution of my research laid out in time-stamped correspondence. "You want to know how I know Cassie did this work herself?" Professor Barnes looked directly at Veronica. "Because I watched her struggle with it. I watched her hit dead ends and have to backtrack. I watched her have breakthrough moments where she'd email me at 4 in the morning because she'd just solved a problem that had been stuck for weeks. You can't fake that process. You can't pay someone to have that journey of discovery." The audience was completely silent now. Even Veronica seemed frozen. But Dean Holloway wasn't finished. "Professor Barnes, can you bring up the footage? Please." My stomach dropped. Footage? The screen changed to a video player. I recognized the setting immediately. The small conference room where I'd recorded myself working through algorithm problems. I'd started doing it as a study technique, talking through my logic to make sure I understood my own reasoning. The video played. There I was, 6 months ago, tired and wearing an old sweatshirt, standing at a whiteboard covered in equations. My voice came through the speakers. "Okay, so if we apply the hash function here, and then cross-reference with the distributed nodes. No, wait, that won't work because of the latency issue. Unless." Video me paused, thinking hard, then started erasing and rewriting. "Unless we implement a prediction algorithm that anticipates the delay." Oh my God, that could actually work. I watched myself have a breakthrough in real time. Watched myself get excited, start writing faster, explaining the solution to an empty room just so I could hear it out loud. Several more clips played. Hours of footage compressed into minutes. All of it showing me working alone, thinking through problems, making mistakes, and correcting them. Proving beyond any doubt that this was my work, my research, my mind creating something new. When the screen went dark, you could have heard a pin drop. Dean Holloway turned to look out at the audience, her eyes finding Veronica with laser precision. "We've also discovered something interesting while investigating these accusations," she said quietly, dangerously. "Someone has been filing false reports about Miss Cassie Winters for the past 3 months. Anonymous complaints sent to the Academic Integrity Board, to the Scholarship Committee, even to potential employers. All dismissed as baseless. All coming from the same IP address." My blood ran cold. 3 months of sabotage I hadn't even known about. "The IP address was traced back to a guest computer in our library," Dean Holloway continued. "And we have security footage of who used that computer." The screen flickered one more time. And there was Veronica, sitting at a library computer, face clearly visible, taking screenshots of my email inbox. My sister's face went white as paper. The security footage kept playing. Veronica at the computer, leaning close to the screen, scrolling through what was clearly my email account. The timestamp showed it was from 2 months ago, late evening, when the library was almost empty. She'd thought no one would see. She'd thought she was clever. My father made a sound like something inside him had broken. Veronica stumbled backward off her chair, nearly falling. Someone caught her elbow. "That's not. I was just..." But her voice had no strength left in it. Everyone could see what she'd done. "Email hacking is a federal crime," Dean Holloway said, letting that hang in the air for a moment. "Filing false reports to academic institutions is grounds for legal action. Defamation in front of 500 witnesses is actionable." She paused. "We could involve the police right now." "No," I heard myself say. My voice cracked on the word, but it was loud enough that the microphone picked it up. Everyone turned to look at me. Please don't. Dean Holloway's eyebrow raised slightly. She'd given me the power to choose, and I was choosing mercy. Part of me wondered if I was being stupid. Veronica had just tried to destroy my entire future in front of everyone I knew. She'd been sabotaging me for months without me even realizing it. But she was still my sister. She needs help, I said quietly, looking at Veronica across the auditorium. Not handcuffs. Veronica's face crumpled. She pressed her hands over her mouth, and I could see her shoulders shaking. Dad had his arm around her now, looking 10 years older than he had this morning. Dean Holloway studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. Miss Veronica Winters, you have a choice. You can apologize to your sister and to this assembly right now, and we'll consider this a family matter that requires professional help, or we can proceed with formal charges. You have 30 seconds to decide. The auditorium held its breath. Veronica was crying for real now, not the angry tears from before. These were tears of shame, of someone who'd just watched their worst moment played back in high definition. Dad was whispering something to her, and Aunt Helen had made her way over to them, her expression harder than I'd ever seen it. 20 seconds. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. Not just today, but years of accumulated pain that had festered into something toxic. I thought about the sister who used to braid my hair before school, who taught me to ride a bike, who once punched a boy who made fun of my glasses. 10 seconds. That sister was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of jealousy and failure and self-hatred. 5 seconds. Veronica lifted her head. Our eyes met across the distance. Hers were red and swollen and full of something that looked like desperation. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught it anyway. The auditorium was so quiet that everyone heard. I'm so sorry, Cassie. She said it again, louder this time. You deserved better than this. Better than me. Her legs gave out. Dad caught her as she crumpled against him, sobbing into his shoulder. It was the most honest thing I'd seen her do in years. Dean Holloway let the moment sit, let everyone absorb what had just happened. Then she turned to me, and her expression softened, just slightly. Miss Winters, she said formally, on behalf of this institution, I apologize that your achievement was interrupted by false accusations. Your work speaks for itself, and your integrity has been proven beyond any doubt. She picked up my diploma folder again and held it out to me. Congratulations on your graduation. This time I took it. The folder was heavier than I expected, or maybe my hands were just shaking. Inside was the diploma I'd worked 4 years to earn, my name printed in elegant script, Cassandra Marie Winters, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, summa cum laude. The applause started slowly, one person clapping, then 2, then 10. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on their feet, and the sound was deafening. Some people were cheering. Professor Barnes was beaming at me. Even some of the other faculty on stage were nodding their approval. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at my family. Dad had gotten Veronica into a seat. She was hunched over, face in her hands, while Aunt Helen stood guard beside them. Dad looked up at me on that stage, and I saw tears streaming down his face. He mouthed something that looked like, I'm proud of you. And I felt my own tears start. This should have been the happiest moment of my life. Instead, it felt like watching my family break apart in real time. Dean Holloway leaned close to me, speaking quietly enough that only I could hear. You showed remarkable grace under pressure. That's rarer than intelligence. She squeezed my shoulder briefly. Now go join your classmates. You've earned this day. I walked off the stage on shaky legs. The ceremony continued. More names were called. More diplomas were handed out. But everyone was still looking at me, whispering, recording. My phone was buzzing non-stop in my pocket. Probably people who'd seen videos already spreading online. I found my seat in the graduate section. The girl next to me, someone I barely knew from my networking class, leaned over. That was insane. Are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. For what it's worth, everyone knows you're brilliant. Half the class copied your study guides. She smiled sadly. Your sister's an idiot for trying to tear you down. But that was the thing. Veronica wasn't an idiot. She was hurt and desperate and drowning in feelings she didn't know how to handle. I understood that now in a way I hadn't before. The ceremony ended eventually. We threw our caps in the air. People hugged and took photos and celebrated. I stood in the middle of it all, diploma clutched to my chest, feeling completely alone. Then I felt a hand on my arm. I turned around, expecting Dad or Aunt Helen. It was Veronica. She looked horrible. Makeup ruined, eyes swollen, hands trembling. Behind her, Dad and Aunt Helen were watching nervously, ready to step in if needed. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Veronica said, her voice hoarse from crying. "I don't even forgive myself. But I need you to know something." I waited, not trusting my voice. "Everything you accomplished was real. Every grade, every award, every moment of success. That was all you." She took a shaky breath. "And I'm going to get help. Real help. Because what I did today was unforgivable. And I need to figure out why I became this person." I stared at my sister. This person I'd grown up with who suddenly felt like a stranger. Her confession hung in the air between us, and I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Part of me wanted to scream at her. Most of me just felt exhausted. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Why did you hate me so much?" "I didn't hate you." Veronica's voice broke. "I hated myself. You just became the mirror that showed me everything I wasn't." Around us, people were pretending not to listen while definitely listening. Phones were still out, still recording. This whole disaster was probably trending online by now. But I didn't care anymore. I needed to understand. "Can we go somewhere private?" I asked. Dad stepped forward quickly. "The administrative building." Dean Holloway said we could use her office. He looked between us nervously, like he was afraid we might start fighting again. We walked through campus in silence. The four of us, a broken family trying to hold together. Students stared as we passed. Some whispered. One guy actually tried to take a selfie with me in the background until Aunt Helen gave him a look that could melt steel. Dean Holloway's office was quiet and dark, away from the chaos outside. She wasn't there, probably dealing with the aftermath of the ceremony. Dad closed the door behind us, and we all just stood there for a moment, not knowing where to start. "Sit down, both of you," Aunt Helen said firmly. She'd always been the one who could cut through family drama. "And you," she pointed at Dad, "you're going to listen more than you talk for once in your life." Dad looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. We all found seats. Veronica and I ended up on the small couch, careful not to touch each other. "Start from the beginning," I said to Veronica. "I need to understand when this started." Veronica stared at her hands. "Do you remember when I got into medical school?" "Of course." Dad threw a huge party. He invited everyone he knew. All his friends from the shop, all the relatives, even people from church we barely talked to. Veronica's voice was flat, reciting facts. He kept saying, "My daughter the doctor," like it was already done, like I'd already graduated. The pressure was crushing. I remembered that party. I'd been 16, quiet and awkward, hiding in the corner, while everyone celebrated Veronica. I'd been happy for her then. Genuinely happy. "Medical school was nothing like I expected," Veronica continued. "Everyone there was smarter than me. They studied harder. They understood things faster. I was drowning from day one." "You never said anything," Dad interrupted. "You told us everything was fine. Because you were so proud," Veronica's voice rose. "How could I tell you I was failing when you'd already told everyone I was going to be a doctor? When you'd already started planning which specialty I should choose?" Dad flinched, like she'd slapped him. "So I cheated," Veronica said quietly. "Just once at first, a small quiz that didn't matter, but it made things easier. So I did it again, and again, until I got caught." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolled through something, then handed it to me. It was an official letter from her medical school. I read the words, "academic dishonesty," and "permanent expulsion," and felt sick. "You told us you dropped out because of stress," Aunt Helen said. Her voice wasn't judgmental, just sad. I couldn't admit the truth. I couldn't face the disappointment. Veronica took her phone back. So I lied. And then I had to keep lying. Pretending I was fine. Pretending I'd made a choice instead of having everything taken from me. What does this have to do with Cassie? Dad asked. Veronica looked at me, and I saw something raw in her eyes. You never struggled. You never asked for help. You just quietly excelled at everything you touched. And everyone started noticing. I struggled, I said softly. You just never saw it. I know that now. But back then, all I saw was you succeeding where I'd failed. Dad bragging about your scholarships when he used to brag about my medical school acceptance. Relatives asking about your awards when they used to ask about my studies. She wiped her eyes roughly. Every time you achieved something, it felt like another reminder of what I'd lost. I thought about all those times Veronica had seemed distant or cold over the past few years. The Christmas, when she accidentally ruined my laptop. The Thanksgiving when she made sarcastic comments about my grades. The birthday when she didn't show up at all. I'd thought she was just busy or stressed. I'd never imagined this festering resentment underneath. So you decided to destroy what I'd built, I said. It wasn't a question. I convinced myself you didn't deserve it. That you must have cheated somehow because success couldn't just be that easy. Veronica laughed bitterly. I went looking for proof that you were a fraud. I hacked your email. I looked through your files. And you know what I found? I waited. Evidence that you worked harder than I ever did. Timestamps showing you studying when I was sleeping. Correspondence proving you'd earned every single thing through your own effort. But I couldn't accept it. So I twisted everything in my mind. Made myself believe that your collaboration with Professor Barnes was actually him doing your work. Made myself believe that your success was somehow stolen. She looked up at me. I made myself believe a lie because the truth was too painful. The room was silent except for the sound of Veronica crying. Dad had his face in his hands. Aunt Helen was watching us both with heartbreak written across her features. I'm sick, Cassie, Veronica whispered. Not like cancer sick. Sick in my head. The therapist I finally saw last week, the one Aunt Helen made me go to. She used words like depression and anxiety, and maybe some other things too. She said what I did today was a cry for help from someone who's been drowning for years. That doesn't excuse it, Aunt Helen said firmly. No, it doesn't, Veronica agreed. Nothing excuses it, but maybe it explains it. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The golden child who'd carried too much weight, the achiever who'd cracked under pressure, the person who'd lost herself somewhere along the way and taken out her pain on the person closest to her. She was broken, but she was still my sister. What happens now? I asked. Veronica wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing what was left of her makeup. There's a treatment center about 2 hours from here. They specialize in people who've had mental health crises. I called them yesterday, before the ceremony. I have an intake appointment tomorrow morning. Wait. I felt dizzy. You plan to do this? To accuse me publicly? And then just leave? I didn't plan the accusation, Veronica said miserably. That was impulse. Sitting there watching you about to get everything I'd lost, something just snapped. But yes, I'd already decided to get help. I knew I was falling apart. I've been falling apart for a long time. Dad was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I did this. I put too much pressure on you. I made you think you had to be perfect, and I took Cassie's success for granted, he continued, looking at me. You made everything look so effortless. I never asked how many hours you were working, how tired you were, what you were sacrificing. I just assumed you were fine because you never complained. I didn't know how to complain, I admitted. You were already so worried about Veronica. I didn't want to add to your stress. Aunt Helen made a frustrated sound. This whole family needs therapy. All of you, trying to protect each other by hiding your pain. You know what that creates? Exactly this mess we're sitting in right now. She wasn't wrong. I'll drive you to the treatment center tomorrow, Dad said to Veronica. And when you're ready, when you're better, we'll figure out how to be a family again. A healthier one. Veronica nodded, then turned to me. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but will you let me try to make this up to you? Not now. Maybe not for a long time. But eventually? I thought about everything that had happened. The humiliation at graduation, the months of sabotage I hadn't known about, the hurt and betrayal and anger churning inside me. I thought about how easy it would be to say no, to cut her out of my life completely. But I also thought about the sister who taught me to braid hair, who stayed up with me when I had nightmares after Mum died, who defended me on the playground when I was too shy to defend myself. That person was still in there somewhere, buried under years of pain and bad choices. I can't promise forgiveness right now, I said slowly. What you did hurt me in ways I'm still trying to understand. But I can promise I won't close the door completely. If you really get help, if you really work on yourself, then maybe someday we can find our way back to being sisters. Veronica's face crumpled with relief. That's more than I deserve, thank you. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, letting everything settle. Finally, Aunt Helen stood up. All right. Cassie needs to go celebrate with her friends. Veronica needs to go home and pack. Kevin, you need to figure out how you're going to explain this to the relatives. And I need a very large glass of wine. That got a weak laugh from all of us. Outside Dean Holloway's office, Veronica hesitated. I recorded an apology video on my phone. A real one, explaining everything, taking full responsibility. I'm going to post it online tonight so people stop thinking you did anything wrong. She swallowed hard. It's going to be humiliating. But I earned that humiliation. You don't have to do that, I said, though part of me appreciated it. Yes, I do. I made this public. I need to fix it publicly. She pulled me into a sudden, tight hug. I stiffened, then slowly hugged her back. I love you, little sister. I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. Then she was walking away, Dad's arm around her shoulders, heading toward the parking lot. I watched them go, feeling like I was watching my childhood disappear with them. Aunt Helen stayed behind with me. You handled that with more grace than most adults could manage. I don't feel graceful. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. That's fair. She linked her arm through mine. Come on, let's find your friends. You still need to celebrate this day, even if it got complicated. We walked back toward the main quad where graduates were taking photos with their families. My phone had been buzzing non-stop. Texts from classmates, from professors, from people I barely knew. Some supportive, some nosy, all wanting to know what had happened. Professor Barnes found me first. There's my star student. How are you holding up? Honestly, I have no idea. He smiled sympathetically. For what it's worth, the department chair called. 3 different tech companies saw the footage and were impressed by how you handled the situation. They want to interview you. Because my family drama went viral? Because you showed composure under extreme pressure and defended your work with evidence instead of emotion. Those are valuable skills in any field. He handed me a business card. This one's from my former colleague at a cybersecurity firm. She specifically requested I give you her personal number. I took the card, feeling surreal. My worst day was somehow opening doors. Over the next hour, I took photos with classmates, accepted congratulations from people who'd witnessed the whole disaster, and tried to process everything that had happened. Some people were awkward about it, not knowing what to say. Others were surprisingly supportive, sharing their own stories of complicated family relationships. As the sun started to set, I found myself alone on a bench overlooking the campus. My diploma was in my bag. My phone was full of messages. My sister was on her way to a treatment center. My father was probably questioning every parenting decision he'd ever made. And somehow, I'd survived. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The job offer from the tech company was still there, waiting for my response. Start date in 6 weeks. Salary that would let me finally stop working 3 jobs. A chance to do actual research instead of just studying it. I typed out a response accepting the position. Then I opened a new message and started writing to Veronica. Not a long email, just a short one. I meant what I said. The door isn't closed. Work on getting better. I'll be here when you're ready. Love, Cassie. I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Treatment center stationery. Veronica's shaky handwriting. Thank you for being the bigger person. I'm working on becoming someone worthy of having you as a sister. I'm learning that jealousy is just fear wearing a mask. I was afraid I'd never measure up, so I tried to tear you down instead of building myself up. That was wrong. I'm learning better now. Love always, V. I put the letter in my desk drawer, next to my diploma. Maybe someday we'd be okay again. Maybe we wouldn't. But at least we were both finally being honest about our pain instead of letting it poison us from the inside. I graduated despite the chaos. I got the job. I moved forward with my life. And I learned that success isn't about being perfect or never struggling. It's about showing up every day, doing your best, and having the courage to keep going, even when people try to tear you down. My name is Cassie Winters. I earned my degree. I proved my worth. And I did it with my integrity intact. That diploma on my wall represents more than 4 years of education. It represents resilience, forgiveness, and the strength to rise above the worst moment of my life, and that's worth more than any grade could ever measure.